Good afternoon and welcome. Looks like everybody's here and ready to go. So the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment will now come to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Slay.
Present.
Comptroller Green. Here. President Reed.
Here. Items presented for the first time. Item number 1, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of contracts and leases for various city departments is listed on Exhibit A. Item 2, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of intra-departmental and interdepartmental transfers from various city departments as listed on Exhibit B. Item 3, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of transfers between projects for capital improvement funds as listed on Exhibit C. Item 4, request from the President of the Board of Public Service for approval to upgrade and add one capital improvement project liaison in Fund 1010 and eliminate one civil engineer in Fund 1010. Item 5, request from the Director of Operations Mayor's Office for approval to pay an invoice to the United States Conference of Mayors for membership dues for the period 7/1/15 through 6/30/16 in the amount of $17,511 and Fund 1010, Department 190, account number 5648000. Item 6, request from the Director of Commercial Development, St. Louis Development Corporation, for approval to grant Crownlet Broadway TIF Inc. a 1-year, 8-month extension of time to execute the redevelopment agreement. Item 7, request from the Deputy Controller, Comptroller's Office for approval of the final version of the 10-year long-range financial plan prepared by the city's financial advisor, Public Financial Management, Inc., PFM. Item 8, request from the Acting Director, Department of Health, for approval of the changes to their table of organization, moving portions or positions from Fund 1110 to Fund 1166. Item 9, request from the Acting Director, Department of Health, for approval to make a change to their table of organization by adding one Government Services Analyst, Fund 1166, Department 710. Item 10, request from the Deputy Executive Director, St. Louis Development Corporation, for approval of Board Bill Number 117. This ordinance authorizes and directs the St. Louis Municipal Corporation to procure a loan for the purpose of 1, refinancing existing lease obligations with respect to 1520 Market Street, and 2, funding the acquisition of real property and other costs necessary to prepare a site in North St. Louis for potential relocation of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And finally, item number 11, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval to discuss the letter received from the NAACP regarding funding of body cameras for police officers. That's the extent of the items presented for the first time. Do we have any additions, corrections, or deletions? I think there's at least one correction or amendment.
Yeah. Yes. I'd like to take item number 10 up separately.
Take it up separately.
Yeah, and item 11, that's just for discussion purposes, correct?
Correct. That's discussion purposes, yes. Right. And so item number 10, I understand there is we have an amendment. Okay, and the Comptroller just handed me a substitution of the language.
Oh, okay.
It's for the same general.
Thanks.
Okay. So is this a motion you're going to make, or someone else? I'll make a motion. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the relative to item number 10, we've already approved Board Bill Number 117 as a board, and I was reading this over, and I said, I think we approved that already. What was I think the way it's supposed to have been written, item number 10, and I move that it be amended to say as follows, that the actions of the St. Louis Municipal Finance Corporation with respect to the financing contemplated by ordinance number 70074, Board Bill number 117, be ratified and confirmed, and that the forms of the A, Second Amendment and supplemental base lease, B, Second Amendment and restated lease purchase agreement, C, tax compliance agreement, D, consent to Second Amendment amended and supplemental leasehold deed of trust, security agreement and fixture filing, E, bond placement agreement, and F, first amended and restated subordination, non-disturbance, and I'm having trouble reading this one. Apportionment agreement presented to the Board of Estimate and Apportionment at this meeting be approved. So we'd like to have, that's what the motion would be, so that would be amended to item number 10 to have that language in there.
I second.
And I do have it written for anybody, and I'll give it to our secretary to make sure that we get it in the... So the motion is that we amend it so that the motion would be as follows, as I just stated.
And what was the purpose or the reasoning for changing that language? What was it a requirement by our SLBC?
It's a requirement by those that are involved in the financing that we've already approved Board Bill number 117.
Got it.
And what this says, it authorizes and directs the St. Louis Municipal Finance Corporation to procure a loan. What this would do is an approval that we would have to make to ratify the actions of the Municipal Finance Corporation. Is anybody here that could speak on that specific issue? We do have somebody here. And identify yourself and who you represent.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Grimm with Gilmore & Bell. We're special counsel to the St. Louis Development Corporation on this project. Mark Boatman, who's co-bond counsel on the project, is also here. The language on the agenda, as explained to me by the Deputy Executive Director, was a clerical error, as Mayor stated. The board bill has already been approved. What the board bill requires is that the documents be approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. And so, as the Mayor indicated, the intent of the substitute language is to conform with the specific requirements of the board bill, that the board approve the documents now during final form.
Okay. Yeah, that's not right.
So it would require ratification by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. So the ordinance has been already approved by this board and approved by the Board of Aldermen, and the documents that have been executed pursuant to that under the ordinance requires the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to ratify those documents.
That's correct.
Right. Any questions or comments about that? So I made the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by the Controller. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Then I'm just going to vote present on
Okay,
it.
present to, so it's 2 ayes and a present by the President of the Board of Aldermen. So that item's been amended, and so we will take that up separately at your request. So I'll entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 9 and 11 as printed. No, I'm sorry, 1 through 9 is printed. 11 for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. And I'd also, at this point, like to make a motion that item number 10, as amended by the amendment that we made and was approved,
Second.
I'd like to make that motion, and it's seconded by the Controller. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 I'll vote present on that.
Present, 2 ayes and a present. Item number 10, as amended, is approved by this body. All right, this time, we will take up the request, item 11, request from the Controller's Office for approval to discuss the letter received from the NAACP regarding funding of body cameras for police officers. Madam Controller, the floor is yours.
So moved. So to discuss.
Okay, okay, so you want to move that we discuss it? I'll second it. And we'll go ahead and have a vote, and then we'll discuss it. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Item number
There we go.
11 has been approved, so we'll open it up for discussion. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, body. I received a letter from the NAACP requesting that the city would seriously consider funding body cameras as soon as possible, I responded concurring with the NAACP, stating that we should fund body cameras sooner rather than later in order not to jeopardize the city's public peace, health, and safety. So therefore, I wanted to bring it to this body today so that we as city leaders could act responsibly, take appropriate steps in order to move forward on protecting the city's public safety. My office, I have identified balances that are available unspent in ward capital. And those balances, we estimate that would be estimated as $30 million that's unspent. We are quite aware that those balances are earmarked for ward projects throughout the city. However, they remain unspent in the form of cash in the bank. So therefore, we are, the comptroller's office are of the thought that that would be a place where we have dollars that we could leverage the $1.5 to $2 million that body cams are estimated to be the cost, that we could look there before we would borrow money from any other outside source. We would look inside the coffers of the city and say that these dollars could be reallocated, not costing any additional taxpayer dollars, but to use taxpayer dollars already present and unspent in the city coffers. So therefore, I would just wanted to bring this to the body for discussion so that we as the city's leaders charged with budgetary matters approval would be aware that these dollars are available to be considered for making use to purchase body cams. In the city of St. Louis in the last 12 months, we have had and have seen 3 police-associated shootings that in the latest one in particular, citizens have been saying that if body cameras were present, then we would not need to be looking for witnesses. Instead, those particular police could have been solved, the actual shooting would have been solved with the body cam, and those police can be activated on other city matters, public safety matters. But without a body camera, now we have to wait to solve this particular shooting, and the time that an hour spent by police officers on waiting and wondering what actually happened, we would hope that the police department would take in account that the comptroller is saying, hey, we have identified funds if you would like to move forward with implementation of body cams.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Comptroller, the $30.7 million number, where did that number come from, and what does it include?
Alderman Reed, since 1994, there was an authorized tax of half-cent sales tax authorized the ward capital to receive anywhere between $8 and $9 million a year. That's nearly $175 million over the last 20 plus years that has been received for ward capital. In addition, there's a bond issue for parks, ward parks in wards, which is also ward capital because it can only be spent for parks in wards, and it's still considered ward capital, along with public dollars that it's not captured under the half-cent sales tax, public works dollars, which is approximately $10 million a year. All told, this year that's actually $50 million instead of the 30, but my office being conservative, we only use the rolling balances, not the new money that each ward will receive approximately $375,000 per each of the 28 wards as new money, in addition to the rolling balance of the 10 that rolled over from St. Louis Public Works, the other 10 rolled over from the half-cent sales tax, and then of course I just mentioned the $20 million, which was a standing balance that rolled over from the St. Louis Parks bond. So that $50 million, of course, I wouldn't want to suggest that it would be available, but certainly a step back to the 30, which 10 of that 30 we know is already earmarked and would be spent, all but $500,000, which rolled over from the half-cent sales tax. But we do not have knowledge of any of the new monies, which is the $375,000 per ward, which adds up to over the 9 plus 5 million that I spoke about that's added as new money. Every year since, like I said earlier, every year since 1994, each ward receives approximately 9 to 10 million. 8, 9 to 10 million, depending on what it is that the total of the half-cent sales tax brings in. So those numbers are solid. Those numbers have been calculated by my very capable staff, and so I brought them forth. Those numbers were discussed with the mayor's office several weeks ago, so they are very well knowledgeable of those numbers. We did make calls to the president of the board so that they would also be aware of why those numbers are there and available and in cash in the bank. City government works, people always say the city government needs to work like a business. Well, all I'm saying is here's money sitting in the bank that can be leveraged. This is not the first time we have been a successful, able to leverage dollars. And I was discussing with the mayor earlier that we've done this before. This is not new. We know that these dollars most likely could be used well in advance of them being needed for those earmarked purposes which they are for. So there's some very important infrastructure purposes in each and every ward, and I do not suggest that we replace doing any of that work with purchasing body cams, but I am suggesting that we work smarter, looking at dollars that we have available for leveraging. If the need comes where the police department actually requests. My job as comptroller is not to dictate to the police and not to give policy to the police or tell them what to do. We have a CEO, and that's the mayor of the city, not the CFO, which is my job. My job is to point to where there's available dollars in cases where we have emergency situations or any kinds of funding that's needed, and that's basically why I'm bringing it to this body today. I'm making a point to say that it is proper and appropriate to look to these funds, these balances, in the case that we are deciding to go forward to purchase body cameras.
Okay, Madam Comptroller, I have a number of issues with the proposal. First one being that this number that has been consistently put out against the Board of Aldermen, saying that we are sitting on $30.792 million of money that we are just sitting over there hoarding. I think that is completely misleading. First off, of the $30 million, $20 million of that money is set aside and targeted just for parks. That's the only place it could be spent, is part of the parks bond money. And of the $10 million balance that would be left, $5 million is programmed will be spent this year, and the other $5 million is already programmed also. Having spent numerous years as an alderman, the $300,000 you get each year to do everything from pave streets to replace curbs to repair alleys, to cut the grass, all of the things that you have to do, that money is generally spent and programmed in the first 20 minutes by the time you get it. I think body cameras are very important. I think to continue to perpetuate this misleading idea that the board is sitting on money, I think is irresponsible. I think we should look at where we can get body cameras, and I can understand NAACP having that in their letter because that's the number that was put out, that the Board of Aldermen was hoarding $30 plus million. Again, I think we should look at where we can come up with the money for body cameras. I'd also like to know if grants have been applied for. I know that the president has made this a priority. I think grants, there are a bunch of grants out there that are available. Have grants been applied for? What else have we done to find this money? I also have a letter from just 14 members of the Board of Aldermen that signed it today, and that's only because 14 of them had an opportunity to sign it. There are others that have called that would like to sign the letter, and the letter basically states what I just stated, that they are in support of body cameras, and they would like to see where else we can get the money, but the funds that are allocated for these neighborhoods, and you got to realize a lot of the neighborhoods, this money is just a small token of what we really should be doing in some of these neighborhoods to strengthen the fabric of these neighborhoods. We have families living in deplorable conditions all across the city. And to take the money from those families that are hoping to see their parks renovated, that are hoping to see the streetscapes improved, I think is the wrong move. Again, we need to find money for body cameras. I spent time down there last year, down there midnight almost every evening last year with the kids, post Mike Brown shooting. And spent time talking to him, was there when the tear gas was shot and everything else. So I know the importance of it. Led rallies at the church to talk about it, to get people on board with the importance of it. But again, to continue to push this thing down the road, that we have this $30 million that the Board of Aldermen is sitting over there hoarding, I think is completely misleading, and I think it's verging on it being irresponsible, and we need to look at where we can get this money in a real place.
Okay. First of all, I think this is a very important discussion, and I want to thank you, Madam Controller, for bringing this discussion to the Board of Apportionment, and thank you for your recommendation on how we might be able to address this real important issue for our city, and certainly thank you, Mr. President, for your comments as well, all of which are very, very well taken. First of all, I've said this, and I believe it, that body cameras can be a very useful tool for our city, for our police department, not only in terms of helping with investigations, but also in terms of building public trust and transparency. And I think that's very, very important. I think it'll strengthen the department. I think it'll also help build better relationships between government, the police department, and the community in general. We've been doing a number of things, including, creating a civilian review board to help with that very important effort. And I know that any time when we're looking at trying to fund something of importance, we'll figure a way to fund it. And I can tell you that I have asked the Public Safety Director, Richard Gray, to take a look at and do an analysis of body cameras and what it would cost and what kind of different options are out there. And he's done that. And he's not here today, but I think there's this gentleman from his office, Josh, is here. There he is. If anybody has any questions about that. And the Budget Director and I have had discussions as well. And what I hear this afternoon is that we agree that we have to identify the resources, the funding to make this happen as soon as possible, and so that is a good thing. Okay, and Controller has made some suggestions, and the President has also come up with some comments about that as well. But I think we can say for sure that we're going to find the funding, and we're going to do it in a way that's going to be expeditious. I talked with the budget director and asked him to help us with that, and of course he's on it. He says if this is something the Board of Apportionment wants to do, he's going to come up with recommendations on how we might be able to do it, working with all of our offices here, because ultimately we're going to need to come back here sooner rather than later and say, look, we've identified the funding, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is when we're going to do it. I think there's some things to keep in mind, and why it takes longer than we would all like is that there are a lot of components to this. It's not just about buying the cameras, which I understand initial cost based on the public safety director's estimates would be about $1.2 million. It's also about the storage and maintenance, and we'd have to hire somebody, at least one person, maybe more, to manage that effort internally. Again, it's just part of what we need to consider while we're going forward. It's just not about buying the cameras. And so I do support I do support the funding through unencumbered funds of this, and I think we can find ways to get that done, as I said before. And meanwhile, I know we're prepared, I've talked to the chief about this, to start a pilot project where we enter into negotiations with the police officers union for use. We do have a collective bargaining union, a collective bargaining agreement with the men and women of the police department, and I am told that this will be a subject of discussions with the bargaining representatives and police officers and the sergeants and above, and so that's something that we need to make sure we take into consideration as we go forward. And also, there's a lot of other issues as we go forward, but ultimately I think we all agree, it sounds like, that we should be funding these, and it should be sooner rather than later. The budget director has agreed to help us with identifying that. The comptroller's already come up with some ideas that maybe the president of the Board of Aldermen does not agree with, but I can tell you my staff and I we're ready to work with your staffs and you as well to make sure we can come back here again sooner rather than later to find this funding and make sure we do it in a way that is efficient and one that gets the results in terms of what we want to achieve happen.
All right, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make a recommendation that if this is critical and it is that important to all of us, let's take it from the rainy day fund. I hear that there's $14 million in the rainy day fund. If this is $1.5 million or $2 million, let's take it from the rainy day fund. If indeed we get approval, we get it through the police union through collective bargaining. And I think that's one of the things the fund is there for. I mean, this will help with public safety and everything. And that way we're not taking from the neighborhoods and from the communities that need it the most across the city.
Well, it's something here. Here's what I would suggest. I don't think it would be appropriate to make a decision right here today. I mean, we do have this on for discussion, but I think these are all things that go into considering, what we're doing and why we're doing it, how we're doing it, how much it's going to cost. So I do think that those suggestions should all be taken into consideration. I have to tell you, I think you both would agree we have a very, very capable, competent, hardworking, and very smart budget director, as well as the staff within the department that will help us as we go forward. And hopefully, sooner again rather than later, we'll be back here agreeing to a funding mechanism and then an approach on how we do it. We cannot lose sight of the fact, however, that we do have a collective bargaining agreement that we need to comply with, and as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr.
Anything
Mayor.
else? Thank you all. Does anybody have anything else to bring before this body?
No, I do have the letters that I will present to you. I'll make sure that you're off.
Okay. So, if there's nothing else further to discuss, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carried. Thank you.